Death Race 2000. Roger Corman produced drive-in movie from 1975, where in a dystopian future, a major racing event takes place, where the drivers must drive across country and earn points by running over and killing members of the public. Among the drivers is a young pre-Rocky Sylvester Stallone, as a hilarious brute called Machine Gun Joe, and Frankenstein played by David Carradine, a masked figure who is the most celebrated driver in the race, as well as being considered the best driver. A mysterious character who's not all that he seems to be, one who walks a fine line between man and legend. But all that aside, this movie is absolutely nuts! Yeah, it's a movie about a gladiator-style race where you have to earn points by running over members of the public. That's the least of the crazy. This film is so insane. There's a scene where a hospital literally wheels out elderly patients onto the road so they could be run over and gotten rid of. Heavens, Tourette's. This film is mental, and I love it. And in addition to that, it features one of my favourite Sylvester Stallone quotes from a movie.
You know, Myra, some people might think you're cute, but me, I think you're one very large baked potato.
I don't know why that cracks me up so much, but it just does. So it's time to buckle up and listen to a young Sylvester Stallone say, "Hey, I'm the best driver," as we look into 10 things that you didn't know about Death Race 2000. So let's check it out. Number 10, based on a short story. Death Race 2000 is based on a 1956 short story called The Racer by Danish-American novelist I.B. Melchior, who, by the way, also claimed to be the uncredited brains behind both Lost in Space and Star Trek. Like the movie it's based on, The Racer tells the story of a futuristic automobile race from New York to Los Angeles, where the drivers could use violence with their vehicles towards the other drivers and pedestrians. And the short story was actually a lot more serious than the subsequent movie, with producer Roger Corman describing it as serious and vicious. Number 9, Rollerball got the ball rolling for Death Race 2000. So it was 1975, and flares were a thing, and the movie Rollerball was generating lots of buzz. It seemed like this futuristic story about a violent and bloody sports arena got everyone talking. And yeah, it was quite shocking for its time, to show a futuristic world where violence and death is not only acceptable, but is also cheered on as entertainment and even commercial. Roger Corman decided that he wanted a piece of that pie, and to basically make his own rollerball, where he turned to the short story The Racer, and he felt that it would be interesting to turn the movie into a satirical comedy, played more for laughs while keeping the violent viciousness of the short story. Calamity Jane actress Mary Woronov expressed that Death Race 2000 isn't really violent, but more of a spoof of violence. So, in other words, the cartoon style of violence in Death Race 2000 is a commentary on violence itself. So, the movie is actually really quite deep. Number 8, trouble with the script. So Corman's production company New World Pictures were obviously helming Death Race 2000, with a working budget that sat somewhere between $300,000 to $530,000, giving it an incredibly low budget. Scriptwriter Robert Thom wrote a screenplay, as he did for previous Roger Corman picture, Bloody Mama. Actor-director Paul Bartel was hired to direct. He also starred in the movie as Frankenstein's surgeon, and most people will probably remember him as the movie theatre manager from Gremlins 2. However, he didn't like the script and found it to be unfilmable. So Charles B. Griffith, who Corman had previously worked with on A Bucket of Blood and the original Little Shop of Horrors, was brought in to make rewrites. However, there were apparently still tensions over the script during the movie's shoot. It sounds like director Bartel and producer Corman were at odds with each other, particularly as far as the comedy goes. Yes, Corman wanted it to be satire and camp, but Bartel felt that Corman actually took a lot of the humour out. So it sounds like originally it was going to be more of a balls-to-the-wall comedy caper, you know, an all-out comedy, much in the same vein as Cannonball Run and Smokey and the Bandit, only with more blood and guts and carnage. And on a side note, director Paul Bartel's real-life sister would also star in Death Race as the fangirl of Frankenstein who sacrifices herself for him to run over. Yeah, remember I said the movie was weird? Number 7. The race cars were pre-owned Volkswagens. One major aspect of the movie was the cars themselves. Now, the production needed to make futuristic cars that looked the business, but didn't exactly have a lot of money to play with, so Roger Corman himself bought used Volkswagens, and then went to a custom car builder to build new bodies for the cars, which would actually be cost effective. So that's how we got the cars that you see in the movie. Basically rebuilt pre-owned Volkswagens, repurposed to look like futuristic race cars. Corman also expressed the importance of each car having its own theme to go with the drivers. For example, the cowboy western car, the gangster car, the fascist car, and Frankenstein's green dragon car? Sure. And it is thought by many that out of all the cars, the one that stood out the most and was used the most in promotional stills for the movie was the western-themed car that was designed to look like a bull. And Frankenstein's dragon car proved to be quite the headache for the production, as the teeth on the front of the car kept falling off and had to constantly be glued back on. For the most part, the actors themselves actually drove the cars for filming. No stunt doubles. I can't help but feel like if this wasn't an independently made movie, and was a big mainstream movie, most of those scenes probably would have been filmed with stunt drivers. Number 6. Casting possibilities. So when it came to the movie's main lead, the mask-wearing Frankenstein, the original choice for the part was Peter Fonda, but he found the script to be too ridiculous. David Carradine was cast in the part as he was a big TV star at the time, thanks to the TV show Kung Fu, and in order to get him, he was paid 10% of the movie's box office earnings. Sylvester Stallone got the part of Machine Gun Joe because director Paul Bartel liked his performance in the movie The Lords of Flatbush. And as Wikipedia points out, Death Race 2000 came out just 1 year before Stallone really made it big with Rocky. So in Death Race, he was literally a huge star in the making. In fact, some parts of the world would feature Stallone as the main character on the movie's poster. Interestingly though, Roger Corman didn't think that Stallone could ever be a leading man because he felt that he was just too good at playing a heavy. Well, he sure got proven wrong, didn't he? And of course, Death Race 2000 also features John Kreese actor Martin Kove as Nero the Hero. And supposedly somewhere in the movie, director John Landis stars as a mechanic. Number 5. Tensions on set. Death Race 2000 was shot around Southern California, and apparently this movie wasn't an easy shoot. First, there was the as-mentioned creative differences between director Paul Bartel and producer Roger Corman, as well as the fact that filming had to be delayed while the production had to wait for David Carradine to finish filming Kung Fu, in which when the shoot would start, the production then had to deal with bad weather. And there was just a lot of pressure in general taking place among the cast and crew, with the movie itself being its own race to the finish line. Things kind of reached boiling point when David Carradine and director Paul Bartel's working relationship had soured. So much so, Bartel even considered firing Carradine and replacing him with Lee Majors. Thankfully, Bartel and Carradine were able to patch up their differences and continue working. Number 4. Video game and comic book. So in 1976, 1 year after the release of the movie, there was an arcade game that was kind of considered, I guess you could say, an unofficial video game, not fully licensed or endorsed with the Death Race 2000 movie. And wow, just look at that arcade cabinet, that's epic! In the game, you're a car sprite, racing to run over human sprites in order to get points. So yeah, it's totally based on the movie. The game was successful, with it becoming the 7th highest grossing arcade game of 1977. but it also brought with it a ton of controversy due to its violent nature. Yeah, this was a long time before the day and age of Grand Theft Auto. In 1995, 20 years after the movie's release, Roger Corman started a string of Death Race comics by his comic book brand, Roger Corman's Cosmic Comics. Yeah, apparently Corman had a comic book label too. The comic was called Death Race 2020 and was a sequel to Death Race 2000, which focuses on the character Frankenstein returning to the violent and sadistic world of Death Race, which also featured... Elvis? Sadly, if you were a fan of this comic back in the day, it stopped publication after 8 issues, with the story never being resolved. Nope, to this day, it never came to a conclusion. Number 3. Alternative possible ending. So, yet again, there was something of a creative conflict with how to end Death Race 2000. Now, Corman was all for having Frankenstein kill the president, who throughout the movie was seen as an evil, sinister figure who championed the race. However, in the movie's last scene, we see Frankenstein kill the reporter that we've been following throughout the movie by simply running him down, with no real rhyme or reason other than he's annoying. Although director Bartel liked this ending, Corman was against it, as he felt that this last act of cruelty would compromise Frankenstein's hero image. Corman suggested having the reporter shot by FBI agents, with Frankenstein making some kind of funny joke or quip about the issue. But ultimately, when it came to filming, Bartel shot his preferred version of having Frankenstein mow the reporter down. That's all there was to it. That's what he filmed, and that's what we got. It seems like they just wanted one final sadistic gag to end the movie with, but just couldn't figure out how to do it. Yes, the ending we got does make Frankenstein seem less heroic, but look, the whole thing is a comic book and a comedy. We're not really meant to take it seriously. We're just meant to accept that this is the movie's universe and this is just the way things are. Number 2. A race to the box office returns. Death Race 2000 was released in April 1975, and it was actually a big hit, making somewhere between $5 to $8 million in the box office, against its budget which was $500,000 or under, making it very profitable. However, it didn't get the best reviews. Many were shocked with the violent nature of the movie, with Gene Siskel calling it possibly the goofiest and sleaziest movie he's ever seen. In many ways, I think this depiction of mindless violence being seen as modern entertainment was ahead of its time when it came out. As in Roger Ebert's original review, he hated the movie for its violence, so much so he awarded Death Race 2000 0 stars. But many years later would backtrack on this opinion when in the early 2000s, The Fast and the Furious came out, where he referred to Death Race 2000 as, quote, a great tradition of summer drive-in movies. Well, he sure changed his outlook, didn't he? Something else I noticed when watching recently that really makes me think that Death Race 2000 was ahead of the curve is the character of the news reporter lady, who whenever she talks about another character or introduces another character, no matter who it is, she always introduces them as a close dear friend of hers. Every time. And how often do we see celebrities do this? Like at events when they introduce other celebrities, they always feel the need to add that they're a close personal friend, and it often does feel fake and phony or for clout. Yes, it's a small detail, but one that really makes me think that the writers of this movie definitely knew what they were doing. You see, they definitely were on the ball here. In the following decades, Death Race 2000 would gain a huge cult following, as well as movie directors like John Landis and Joe Dante also being fans of the movie. It's a guilty pleasure full of shameless violence, sadistic characters, fast cars, explosions, and nudity. So the movie has plenty of bangs, blood, boobs, bush, and bums, so it really is quite perfect. Number 1. Death Race Beyond. So Death Race 2000 may have been a fun drive-in movie of 1975, but it hadn't finished leaving its mark on pop culture yet. In 2008, a remake came out simply titled Death Race, which starred Jason Statham, and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who also gave us Event Horizon and the Resident Evil movies. Although marketed as a remake, Anderson insists that the movie is actually kind of set in the same continuity as Death Race 2000, with David Carradine returning as Frankenstein, but only lending his voice. The movie did okay in the box office. It made $76 million on a budget that sat somewhere between $45 to $65 million, so it was really nothing to write home about. And it got mixed reviews. It was followed up by 3 direct-to-DVD sequels, including Death Race 2 in 2010, Death Race 3 Inferno in 2013, and Death Race Beyond Anarchy in 2018. However, while that series was taking place, an alternative sequel came out in the form of Death Race 2050, another direct-to-DVD entry, which came out in 2017, this one being produced by Roger Corman himself. So I guess in a way, this entry could be seen as the true follow-up to the original Death Race 2000. And visually speaking, this does look like that strange world from that original movie. In fact, Corman got the idea for the sequel when he was told by an Italian journalist that they felt that The Hunger Games, which was very big and popular at that time, was actually very similar to Death Race 2000. That, and Corman felt that the other film series that was currently happening at that time missed the point of the political commentary of his original movie. Death Race 2050 actually got pretty positive reviews, and it currently has 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, with it feeling it just has the right amount of action, spectacle, and splatterness. So it's nice to see that even in his late 80s, Corman could finally go back and make a sequel to his movie. But when it comes to my preference, I'm all about that original 1975 movie. A guilty pleasure which, unlike a lot of modern movies tend to do, doesn't feel safe and sanitized as not to cause offense. Death Race 2000 is definitely a time capsule of its era, when rough around the edges drive-in movies were king. Due to its carefree, gratuitous nature, I don't think the original Death Race could be made at this moment in time, especially in this day and age of fear of offending modern-day audiences or facing social media backlash. And, well, Death Race 2000 is kind of like the antidote to that paranoia, because it doesn't get any more shamelessly unapologetic of offense than this movie. But in a good way. Anyway, I'm Minty, and remember, don't be a baked potato! See ya!